Hi everyone, welcome to I think part 5 of this real-time tutorial of George, my cat. So today we're going to be focusing on the nose and the surrounding ginger fur. So nose, ginger fur, he's got a ginger chin as well, and we'll do the mouth as well while we're at it. There will be some surrounding areas that we're not going to touch today, for example the white fur down here and up here, but we'll focus on that in the next session, which will be dedicated to white fur itself. So let's jump straight in. I'm just going to rub out the outline so that it's faint to the point that I can just about see it. And if you have stumbled across this part and you would like to join me from the beginning, I will put the link to the previous videos in the description below in case you do want to draw along. But if you just want to know how to draw a cat nose, or you just need some general ginger fur tips, then feel free to stay. This should hopefully be helpful for you. So just getting this all prepared. I am going to be using the Faber Castell Polychromos colour pencils again. And I am using Fabriano Artistico Hotpressed watercolour paper, which is the paper I use for all of my coloured pencil drawings at the moment. I just need to get this bit rubbed out as well. It's very close to the eye, so I don't want to rub out what I've done there. In fact, I might use my other eraser to do that bit. This is also quite a good tool to have, a mono eraser. It's great for rubbing out small parts where you need to be quite precise. So yeah, it is quite a handy thing to have. The only thing is it does leave bits of rubbing out, but I find sometimes you can either blow it away or swipe it off, or you can just pick up little bits with the putty eraser. That does the trick. Almost there. I'll sort the outline of the chin and stuff once I get to that bit. We'll just focus on this bit further up for now. Perfect. So I think I'm going to start off with the nose and then work outwards. So I'm going to start with, I think this is the right colour. Yes, beige red, my favourite pale pink colour. Just to get the base layers down, just going to give it a quick sharpen. Ignore the sound of the sharpener. For anyone who's interested which sharpener I use the Swordfish Icon desktop sharpener, and it's got like a handle that you turn around. I really like it so far, just in case you're wondering and you're not sure what sharpener to try. It's quite cheap as well. I think it was only about £13, so I'm not really too worried if it doesn't last for a super long time, because it will be quite affordable to replace. So I'm using very small circular motions, which is the best way to achieve a smooth surface, and I am being quite delicate with the pressure. I don't want to put too much down because it's not actually a very pink surface. Yes, it does have kind of a slightly pink tone to it, as it is his skin, but it doesn't want to be over pink, so we'll just do a little bit to begin with. And I'm keeping quite a consistent pressure throughout for the moment. So that's that covered. I'm just going to add a little bit more pressure on the parts that are darker and more shadowed, just to get that marked out. Still using small circular motions because I don't want it to get too scribbly, if that makes sense. I find just using the small circular motions keeps it consistent and keeps it under control, which is what we want. We'll also just going in the nostrils as well, just because you will be able to see some quite shadowy pink surfaces in there, so might as well get some pink colour applied now. So I'm going to use the colour Ivory next, which is quite a creamy colour, just because I think there is a little bit of a yellow tint to the nose. So I'm going to use the same method as I just have with the beige red. Small circular motions, nice delicate pressure, and this will just add a slightly more yellow tint to it. Now I'm going to go in with the white pencil just to blend together those two layers, just because I don't think I really need much more in the sense of pale colours. So I'm just going to sharpen my white pencil because it's quite blunt at the moment. So again, small circular motions, but this white pencil, because it's quite soft, this is a Caran d'Ache Luminance pencil. This is the only one that I'll be using that isn't part of the Polychromos set. But because it's soft, it will kind of blend together the layers I've done so far quite nicely. And that'll just make it look a bit smoother. So next step, if you look at the reference photo, you can see George has got a bit of varying colours on his nose. So it stays like a very pale pink up near the top, and then it goes darker around the rest of it. So I'm going to use some of this burnt ochre, so slightly orangey brown, but I'm just going to start that quite gently, starting with this little crease that kind of goes down the middle of his nose, just to increase that shadow. It may look a little orange at this stage, but we will add a bit of brown in a bit to make it a bit more natural looking. And do pay attention to how far up the slightly browner and darker markings go up the nose, because we don't really want to go past that. And I didn't actually mark that out with my outline because I was just happy to sort of figure it out at this stage, but it could have been, if you wanted to earlier on, you could have perhaps marked out with the outline where the markings lie. But yeah, it's up to you, down to how comfortable you are with using your colour pencil straight away. I just didn't really want to have any unnecessary graphite pencil markings around the nose, so I thought I would just wing it at this stage. It does just seem to go just above this left nostril here. And then it kind of continues along to the other one as well. So as you can see, it's looking a little bit orange still at the moment, but we will fix that. So I am going to use now cinnamon, slightly darker pink, just to build up those colours a little bit more. So using the same method, again increasing the pressure in this dent and shadow down the middle of his nose. The next colour we're going to apply is some sort of brown. I'm just going to have a quick little look and see which brown I think would be best. I don't want it to be too dark. Oh, dropping my pencils now. I'll find it in a minute. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try some raw umber, so quite a pale brown. See how that comes out. Definitely looks a bit more brown towards the base of the nose down here near the bottom. That is looking a little yellow for my liking, so I'm going to leave that. Let's try a different one. Okay, my favourite, Bistra. Let's try that. Let's be quite gentle with it so it doesn't go in too dark. Yeah, that's more like it. Again, a bit more pressure in the middle. I'm going to use it with, I'm just going to sharpen it, but then I'm going to use it with a little bit more pressure around the outline of the nose, because there is kind of like a little crease at the edge. Now just make the edge of the nose look a little more solid. And it's be a great opportunity to outline the nostrils a little bit more, make those a little bit obvious, a bit more obvious. And I'm just going to go around the edges towards the top as well. go, it's starting to stand out a little bit more now. I'm now going to use a darker brown. I'm going to use burnt umber, just going to give that a quick sharpen as well. And I'm going to use that to start increasing the darkness in the nostrils. Now with the nostrils, to make them almost like a tunnel, you want to start off with harder pressure kind of at this point, and as you work towards the outside, gradually decrease the pressure, because the shadow is of course going to be darkest the further in it is, and as you move towards the light it's going to lighten with it. I suppose that's the best way of putting it. I know that can sound quite obvious, but I think sometimes when you're using a pencil it can be easy to kind of forget these things. And it is quite a lot darker on this side of the nose, so I'm going to shade it in a little bit with this darker brown. Similar on this side, not quite as much, but it is a little darker around this bit, so I'll just add a little bit more brown to it. And at the bottom down here. And in the crease in the middle. And there are some slightly darker parts in the surrounding areas of that crease, so I'm just adding a very small amount of brown in small circular motions where it's needed. Now looking at it at the moment, I feel that a bit more pink is needed. So I'm going to go back in with the cinnamon, I think, on the darkest parts. Well, not the darkest, but the sort of darker colour of his nose. And just see if adding that gives the colour that I want. And as we're kind of getting to the end of our layering, I'm just starting to press a little bit harder now with these later layers, just to give it a slightly more smooth look. But still, I'm not pressing super hard, it's just a little bit more than I was earlier on. Looks a bit better. I am just looking for my next colour. sepia, there it is. So dark sepia is a great colour for darker sections because it is a very dark grey, almost black but not quite, but it has got a bit more of a kind of browny bluey tint, so that's the best way to describe it. But yeah, it's a really handy colour to have available. Pencil again, being a bit clumsy today. There we go. So this colour, I'll be able to do a variety of things with it. I can use it with more pressure on the darkest parts, so for example inside the nostrils, but I can use it gently to just add a slight hint of grey if I need to. So I'm going to start by adding a little bit around the edge here. And a little bit up the central crease. By the way, I don't know if this has like some professional name, that bit, but I have no idea. Around the outside up here is quite important as well, just to add a little bit more contrast. And definitely around this side here, this is quite a deep shadow on this side. Starting with more pressure at the edge, and as I move towards the middle, decreasing that pressure so that we've got a gradient. Now time to add some darkness to the nostrils. So I'm using a bit more pressure here. I have noticed a slightly grey tint towards the top of the darker markings as well, so just adding a little bit there. And I am just going to add a bit more of the beige red that I used at the beginning on the lighter part, just to increase the pinkness a little bit, because I feel like now I've added more colour down here, it looks like there's barely anything there. It almost looks like it's just white, so a little bit more colour would be ideal. And I'm just going to blend it back in again with a bit more white. Go, so that is the nose itself done. So now for the surrounding areas, we'll start with the two splodges of ginger fur there. So I'm going to start with the ivory, this creamy colour, because that is the lightest colour I could see in the fur, because you can see the very pale colours just peeking through in some parts. So we're going to colour in the whole area with this. And very similar to before, just small circular motions, not putting too much pressure on. And the same on the other side. And there is almost a hint of white fur down by the top lip here, so I am just going to leave a little bit of white there. Now there are some parts where I think I want to add a little bit of pink, especially nearer to the nose, around the mouth area as well. There are some bits of skin showing through, so I am just going to use the beige red, so the paler of the pinks that I like to use. And again, just small circular motions, nice and gently around these parts where I think a little bit of pink would be beneficial. I'm going to do a little bit up near the eye as well, because this bit of ginger fur here pretty much meets with the edge of the eye here. So a bit of pink for the skin would be perfect. Now that I've got the cream and the pink down, I'm going to start marking out some slightly more golden areas. So for that, I am going to be using brown ochre. So again, similar, well, the same technique as previously. We're not going to be working on any texture just yet, but just small circular motions. Want to keep everything as smooth as possible, ideally. So I feel like you want a nice, neat, seamless finish, and I think to achieve that, you want to be as neat as possible with putting your pencil on paper right from the start. Yes, the base layers are going to be covered up quite a lot, but I do believe that you want to be nice and tidy from the beginning to get the best results. So do bear that in mind if you are new to this. So just take your time on these sections. And I find these parts where you're just colouring in gentle layers, I just find it so relaxing, but that might just be me. And I'm paying a bit more attention to slightly darker parts, applying a little bit more pressure where needed on those darker bits. But still we're being very gentle overall. There are some parts where the whiskers come out of, they're slightly darker, stripy looking parts, so do pay attention to those. It's good to start building those up a little bit now, like I am here. It will look a bit more natural once we've added more layers to everything. And there's definitely a bit more colour sort of around this middle section here, so we'll make sure we add some of this colour there. And there does seem to be a little shadow underneath the nose here, so I'm going to start building things up a little bit more in that location, so you can start by using this colour to do so. But we'll certainly be needing some darker colours along there as we go along. Okay, so similar thing on the other side. And to begin with, on this side, I'm mostly paying attention to the parts next to the nose, as it's definitely a bit darker around there and a bit more solid looking. And on the parts where I just want to add a little hint of this colour, I'm not even really pressing on the paper. I'm just letting the pencil rest on it, and that's enough to just apply a small amount of colour. And you'll find the different shadows around this section here. It's going to kind of form the shape of the whole nose area. So not just this bit here, but the bit that goes down from the eyes towards the nose itself. So do want to focus on getting the shadows in the right place, because if they're off, then it will make his nose and face shape look different to what it actually is. So do try your best to pay attention to what you can see in that reference photo. Do your best to copy it as closely as you can. Of course, don't worry if it's not exact. Because we're only human, we're not robots, we're not going to be able to get everything exact. But just try and get it as accurate as you can. And it is definitely a little bit darker around this outer area as well. now that I've pretty much done this side, looking back at the other side, I think actually I was a little bit cautious when I first went in with this colour. So I'm going to go back over here and add some more colour, just so that it's consistent with the other side. Looking a bit better now. I've got some actual colour, which is great. So I just want to blend together what we've done so far, so I'm going to go back in with the ivory pencil, the creamy coloured pencil, and just with a little bit more pressure, not too hard but a little bit more pressure, small circular motions. I'm going to go in and kind of blend together the layers that I've done so far, and that'll just make that base layer nice and solid before we go in with textures. So that's that bit done. So now time to go in with other colours to build up the fur texture. I am going to go in first with cinnamon, just because I think some areas could do with that very slightly pink touch, and then we'll go in with the more obvious colours like the browns and the slightly more orangey looking ones as well. So I'm just going to sharpen the pencil. When doing the base layers, it's not so important for it to be sharp because you can still colour it in quite easily, but when doing the actual hairs you want really nice sharp pencil. That's better. Okay. Just trying to decide where to start. We'll start with this side, and it's worth noting, take notice of where the directions of the fur vary. So kind of around here they move out and away from the nose and slightly downwards, whereas here they kind of curve back up and back on themselves. So we'll start there just to get that slightly more complicated bit done. So I'm going to start kind of by the nose, so I've got a bit of a base, and just doing individual fur strokes, so individual hairs, individual strokes of the pencil, and I'm keeping them quite short because you want your pencil strokes to be consistent with the length of the hairs, and they're quite short here, and it's just slowly building up a little bit of texture. Now I won't be using this pink pencil everywhere, but we'll start adding texture with other colours in any places that I don't use this pink pencil. So here it kind of goes in that direction because it kind of starts around here and and goes out in different ways. So yeah, do keep a lookout for that. I'm finding it's quite hard to see the results at the moment. I mean, I can see them from here, but I don't know if you can actually see it through the camera, but they will start to show. It's all a very steady process, so do just be patient with it. I'm going to work from the nose again and work my way outwards. I'm now going to repeat the same process but on the other side. Okay, I think that will do with that colour now. I don't want to overdo it. I think the next one I want to use is that Bistra colour again, wherever that is. I've put it down somewhere. I hope that wasn't the one I dropped earlier. Let's have a look. I have found it. So this colour, quite a light brown. We're going to start building up those darkest areas, so we can definitely start focusing on the third direction on this section a little bit more, and we'll be able to see something happening a little bit better, hopefully. So I think it kind of starts from here and works around, and just remember to keep those pencil strokes very short so that it looks like the hairs we're trying to draw. And on the darker parts you want to maybe add a bit more pressure and also do the pencil strokes closer together, but on the bits where you just want a hint of brown, decrease the pressure and also do the pencil strokes a little further apart so that more of the light colours underneath can show through. And when you have got to the edge of the ginger section, just want to make sure that what you do is done quite carefully next to the white fur. So I'm just doing very light fur strokes and trying to make it quite a nice natural transition. It doesn't want to be too solid of a line between ginger and white. So just doing small pencil strokes towards the edge to give it a slightly more feathery effect will just make it look a little bit more natural. And it's definitely much lighter on this bit here, so I'm still going to use this brown, but much further apart. It's very much just there to add a bit of texture. So we'll work towards the corner of the eye now. Again, focusing on following the direction of the fur, focusing on how dark you want things to be, varying your pressure, varying the distance between pencil strokes. And most of the time when I do my pencil strokes for hairs, I do go from root to tip, but sometimes, depending on where you're doing it, it can be easier to go from tip to root, just because it might be easier to move your hand that way. So either way should be absolutely fine. However, I do find it's good to do mostly root to tip, because then the root's more solid, but then you kind of flick, which will make the end of the hair look a bit more normal. Here, for example, I'm going to go tip to root because some of the ginger fur here is lighter, and that will make a more soft transition between the darker bit and the lighter bit, as the ends of the pencil strokes here will be less blunt. So that is a scenario where I would go the other way around. But then I am doing it the other way around again for the edge of the ginger fur, so that it looks nice and natural next to the white fur, or what will be the white fur. And this bit is definitely lighter, but we're going to continue using this colour to add texture. So just decrease the pressure a little bit. We're almost there on this section now. Just a little bit more to fill in. Need a little bit more up here. There we go, so that's that first section done. I'm just going to resharpen the pencil and then we'll do it on the other side as well. We'll start with the darkest bit in here. So I'm using harder pressure at this point. And as I move away from the nose, I am gradually decreasing the pressure on the pencil, slightly increasing the distance between each pencil stroke so that those light colours show through. So I'm paying attention again to any darker little bits where the whiskers come out. So I have lost a little bit the markings I made previously, so just reapplying them, still individual strokes of the pencil, just so that they continue to look hairy, because it doesn't want to randomly just look like a blob of colour, it wants to look natural. Now it is quite light around this bit here, so I'm just doing the odd little pencil stroke quite lightly, as I don't want to take away from this highlighted area. Now I mentioned earlier there's a slightly white bit along here, but it's only a little bit, so I'm just going to do a few little flicks of the pencil just to add a little bit of colour towards that section. There we go. and it just makes it look a bit more fluffy, a bit more natural. So I think we will move on to this colour next, burnt ochre again, so the slightly orangey brown. Let's just get that sharpened up. Same sort of technique as I've just been using on the slightly more rich parts of the colour where we need a bit more orange. I'm doing individual pencil strokes to replicate the individual hairs to get that texture. The previous layer though with that brown pencil should have done most of the work though, so we're very much just adding colour now onto areas that need it. So that should be enough on that side. Don't want to overdo it, because we don't want it to look richer than the rest of the fur that we've done previously. That's the only bad thing really about doing little parts of this drawing each week, is I feel that because I'm having such a long gap between doing one part and then the next, I may end up doing a slightly different technique. I feel like I don't ever do two drawings exactly the same. It'll be roughly the same sort of techniques, but I feel like I will always do things slightly differently every time. So again on this side I'm focusing mostly on those darker stripes where the whiskers are coming out and trying to keep the fur in between quite highlighted so that it looks nice and 3D. I'm just going to add another little darker bit here on this side. That's better. And then it is darker around the middle on this bit. Should do there. I'm now going to go back into a darker brown, just trying to find the one that I used before. I believe it was burnt umber that I used. Where have I put it? There it is, burnt umber. So that's one of my darkest browns that I have. I'm going to use that just to add any further texture and to deepen any dark shadows that are needed, especially around the nose area. I'm going to use it very gently just so that it doesn't go too dark too quickly. again, same sort of method as before. So it's especially got some darker bits around this part of the nose here. So I'm going to copy that as closely as I can. And I just want the odd little dash of this colour here and there on this lighter part down here, because that will kind of show like little gaps in the fur, which you can see in the reference photo. It almost just makes that fur look a bit thicker and a bit more believable. And I'm finding using this colour is showing the fur direction a little bit better, because there is a bit more contrast going on now. So you can definitely use these darker colours to your advantage as long as you're gentle with them. And on this extra dark bit around the side of the nostril here, I'm actually just going back to more of the colouring in method, but very gently, and keeping the pencil movements very, very small. That's more like it. Now we'll go on to the other side. So I'm going to keep using the same sort of motion right next to the nose here. And as I move away, I'm going back into the individual pencil strokes to continue adding texture to the fur. And this brown pencil is very handy to add a bit more contrast to these parts where the whiskers go. It just suddenly dawned on me I hadn't said a word for about a few minutes there. It's very easy to get engrossed in the process and just kind of forget the outside world a little bit. I'll try not to get into the habit of that though, because of course this is a tutorial. I think the best part about a tutorial is watching, but of course I do need to be explaining what's happening, but sometimes I'll just kind of be doing the same thing that I've already explained, so that's why I may be quiet for a little bit sometimes, but I'll try not to abandon you too much. Just going back to the other side again, just to add any little bits I think could be improved slightly. Although now I feel like I need a bit more of a red colour, so I've got the colour in mind that I want. Burnt sienna. Perfect for just adding a bit of richness to those extra red ginger areas. We should only be needing a little bit of it. But especially up here on these slightly darker parts. Just because I wasn't wanting it to look too brown. Yes, ginger fir is essentially made up of lots of different shades of brown, but it was starting to look a bit too like a dull brown. So this will just brighten it back up again a little bit. And on these whisker areas as well. Okay, so I'm now going to be using the slice tool just to add a little bit of extra texture, bring out any additional highlights. I'm going to start with this side. I'm just going to use very small little scratches, because of course this as well you want to keep consistent with the length of the hair. Just add a little bit of highlight. There we go, that's looking good. Do the same on this side. Do with a few highlights up here. Definitely bring it to life a little bit more, just adding a little bit of well-needed contrast as well. There we go, I'm pretty happy with that ginger fir now, so we're going to be moving down the nose and to the mouth and chin area. Just move that up a little bit. I actually almost forgot, before we move on to the next bit, I forgot to add George's freckles to his nose. I can't believe that. So I've got the black pencil to do that, just giving it a quick sharpen. Okay. Got a little one here. He's actually got quite a few. Now that I'm actually drawing his nose, I'm now realising how many little freckles he's got. He is so cute. Little one down here. little one there. I think that's it, but I am actually just going to use the black pencil a little bit more just to add a bit more contrast in the shadows by the nostrils. There we go. Happy with that. Right, let's move on to the mouth. So I'm going to leave the outline kind of around here because that's going to be part of the white fur that I do next time. But the main part of the mouth here and the chin, I am going to make the outline nice and faint. So just using my putty eraser again to do that. Now I want to use this colour, I'm using cinnamon, to go down this part of the mouth, you know, like the line that connects the nose to the mouth. Again, I'm sure there's a professional name for that, but I am no animal expert, so I have no idea. Saying that, I do have a degree in animal behaviour and welfare, but I don't really remember much, to be honest. It was a while ago now, but never mind. Do with a little bit of, that's it, that's a better colour. I'm using India Red just to add a bit more darkness to that part. And that again will be, it'll be detailed a little bit more when I do the white fur around this area. So I'm going to next colour in the bit where his mouth is open. Of course, if you're drawing any other cat, you probably won't have to do this because most cats will have their mouth closed, and that is definitely a little unique part of George. He has got his mouth open all of the time, and I think that's because he had a lot of teeth taken out, so I don't think his mouth kind of hangs correctly. I can't remember which side it is, but he's got completely no teeth on one side of his mouth, so I think that's why he's a little bit special. But I love it. It means he's got a constantly surprised expression on his face, which I think is so cute. So it's going to be quite dark and shadowy in here, but I'm starting with pink because I started with the beige red, by the way, and now again with some cinnamon, just because of course inside the mouth it is pink overall. But we will add some greys in a moment to darken it. So I'm going to go in with warm grey 6, quite dark, but that'll just mean we can achieve plenty of contrast where needed. But I don't want it to look too solid because of course there's going to be white fur next to it, so I'm going to do little strokes of the pencil along the edges just to give the impression of strands of hair, short strands of hair. I hope that makes sense. It just means it looks a little bit fluffy there. And then I'm just going to colour it in very gently using small circular motions again with the pencil because we want to keep it nice and smooth. And I'm going to add a little bit more pressure along where the lip is, just so we've got a nice definite line where it starts. And just to make it a little bit more pink, I'm going to go in with the beige red again, but with more pressure, and that will blend together what I've done in there. Okay, so next we're going to move on to this lip here. I'm going to again start with the beige red, a nice light pink. And I'm going to kind of apply a little bit down the side down here as well, because there is definitely a bit of a pink tint down there. Same down this bit here. Now I'm going to use a lighter grey to what I just did use on this bit, but just a little bit of grey because it is quite a grey pink looking area. Let's just have a look for something that's not too dark. Okay, that's perfect. This pencil is getting a bit short. But this, I think it's cool grey. It's you can't actually see. Cool grey 3, I believe that is. So very carefully, especially down the side here, very gently. I'm only just about letting the pencil touch the paper so that it doesn't get too dark. And this is just helping to achieve those shadows that are on this lip. And I'll just apply a little bit at the top there as well, because that will kind of give the impression of the lip curving in, which is what we want. Lovely. And I do think there is a very slight tint of cream in there, so I'm just going to use the ivory pencil very, very gently just to add a little bit of that colour. And just a little bit more beige red as well, just to increase the pinkness. And finally, I'm going to blend that together with some white. So I'm going to be using the black pencil again to apply the little splodges that he's got. So he's got a little one just here. Now if you have a look at the bigger marking over here, it has got a shine to it. So I'm going to firstly focus on the shape. And I need to take note of what bits look almost white where the shine is. So I'm just going to colour in with more pressure the blackest parts of this marking. And I'm going to decrease the pressure on the pencil on the parts where it looks shiny. And in fact just use very, very minimal pressure on the shiniest bits. Perfect. I'm hoping it will look a bit more in place once I've added a bit more detail. So I'm going to use this warm grey 6 again to add some darker shadows. Again, I'm kind of doing little pencil strokes along here to give the impression of fur, just because it's not going to be a solid straight line. And when I move away from the bits where I've made the shapes of the white fur, I'm going back to the small circular motions, as it is quite a smooth area, especially down here. There's not so much of a fluffy shape going on here, so I can kind of keep it quite smooth. I think we could do with a little bit of brown now. So, just finding the same one that I did earlier. I keep losing the pencils I was previously using. Burnt umber, so the dark brown again. Just to add a little bit more shadow. Again, very, very gentle. And just in the darker parts where the shadow is needed. And I'm actually going to add a little bit of the dark brown into where the mouth is as well, on the inside. That's better, slightly nicer colour going on now. And we're now going to move on to the chin, which is ginger, not quite, it's not such a rich ginger, so we won't be needing as many orangey colours, but again, a bit like up here, I'm going to be starting with the ivory coloured pencil, so a nice creamy base layer. I'm going to start off with more pressure in the middle of the chin and decrease the pressure as I move out, because it does kind of fade into white fur gradually. I'm now going to add some cinnamon, so this darker pink, because there is definitely a pinky look around here, but very, very gentle, small circular motions again. I'm just touching the paper very gently with this pencil just to apply a very subtle tint of this colour, because we don't want it to be too pink, but we do want a little bit of that sort of vibe going on. One thing I've noticed with this fur down here, it does look a lot softer than in other places, so just want to be very delicate with everything that we do here. I don't think there's actually that much pink on this side, apart from like a few kind of in between the hairs, so I'm kind of going to do individual little pencil strokes on this bit just to start gaining the texture. But I don't really want to put any solid pink there, because as I said, there's just a tiny little bit showing through, but at least we can start to make it look a bit more 3D, a bit more fluffy. So yeah, just being nice and gentle with it. And I'm actually starting to do individual strokes over here as well, just to start adding a little more texture there. because it's not going to be particularly orange at all. It's very, as I mentioned a bit earlier, it's very delicate ginger fir. It's just a little bit lighter. I'm going to go in with some more of the ivory pencil, just kind of blend together a little bit what I've done. Also want it to look a little bit more yellow over here, so I might incorporate a little bit of light brown, see what happens. So I'm just going to try some brown ochre. This is a slightly yellowy brown colour, and just very gently add a little bit to make it look a little bit more golden. I'm doing individual pencil strokes to continue adding the texture of the fur, keeping the length of the pencil strokes consistent with the actual hairs. Looks like the hairs kind of go that way down here, so I'll start to produce that general look. And this will hopefully add the slightly more yellowy look over here that I was looking for. But still just very gentle, it's very subtle. And I want it to look nice and soft as well. And I'm continuing this around the bottom of the chin just to keep making the edges look a bit more fluffy. I'm hoping that this section won't really need many layers because it is a lot less rich looking than the rest, but we shall see. We won't rush the process. I think we will need some more brown maybe. Some bits do need to be a little bit darker. I do also want the skin to kind of go into there a bit more gradually as well, so I'm actually going to add a little bit more beige red. Okay, so it's looking nice and yellow now. I am now going to use burnt ochre again, so just to add a little bit of orange, especially on this side here. It looks a little bit more orange in this section, so I'll start to add that, just following the varying directions of the fur. I'm not pressing too hard with it at the moment. I'm pressing a bit harder than I would say with the base layers. But I'm still keeping it fairly gentle just so the layers can build up quite gradually. And I feel like it looks a little bit orange up here by the lips. I'm just colouring it in quite gently, just to add a slightly orange tint at the bottom. We do need some grey as well, because there's definitely a bit of a grey look on the skin where the lip meets kind of the furry area. So I'm going to do some pencil strokes with the grey, just to make that transition a bit more seamless. And a little bit of grey down here to add some shadow and contrast. And while I'm keeping the direction of the fur generally in the same sort of direction, I'm trying to add a little bit of variation here and there just to make it look more natural. And we do need some more grey up here where there's a bit more shadow. I'm going to add a bit of brown to those shadows as well, so I'm going back to burnt umber, the darkest brown that I'm using, but I'm going to use it quite gently. And I'm also going to use it to add a bit more contrast in some of the fur. So using it again, doing the individual strokes of fur, the little hairs, but I'm keeping it quite spaced apart so that it doesn't look too dark. It almost just wants to look like shadows between the hairs. And just a little bit over here as well. Perfect. So I do just want to smooth out some of this area here, so I'm just going to go in with some small circular motions with beige red again, just to blend out anything, soften it up a little bit, especially with the shadows because I haven't had the chance to blend them in just yet. It just looks a little bit softer that way. And I'm also adding a bit of pressure to the edges of the black markings on his lip as well, just to soften those edges a little bit. I'm just going to add a little bit of this to this area as well, because the fur doesn't really have so much texture here, it's a little bit flatter. So I'll use a little bit of this beige red here to smooth it out slightly, nice and gently. And a little bit up here as well. Just using a sort of back and forth motion, so following the direction of the fur but not really doing individual strands. There we go. And I'll just do a tiny little bit more contrast in his mouth. So I'm just going to use the black pencil very gently, just to make that pop a little bit more. And along here as well. So I'm pretty happy with that. It will look a little bit better once I've done the white fur in the surrounding areas, but that is pretty much all the ginger fur done now on his face, so that is great. So we will move on to the white fur in the next section. I'm not sure if I'll do the white fur in all one session or split it into two, but like with the ears I will kind of see how long it takes, because of course most of the fur, like on his chest and everything, is all going to be white as well, so it may take a little bit of time. However, it might be quite good to do it in one session, but we'll just see, easiest way. But I hope that session was helpful, and if you were drawing along, I hope you've got the outcome that you wanted. Any questions, do let me know in the comments or drop me a message on Instagram. But other than that, thank you so much for watching as always, and if you've got to the end of this video, thank you again. I really do appreciate anyone who does watch my videos, but I hope you have a lovely week and I will see you again soon.